Millionaire dad. Watches black worker feed his blind daughter. What happens next will shock you. A wealthy father, used to controlling everything in his world, never expected that a fleeting moment on a dusty construction site would unravel his arrogance. He had always looked down on people who worked with their hands, especially those society pushed to the margins. But one afternoon, he froze when he saw a black construction worker kneel down, gently guiding food to the lips of his blind daughter. That simple act of kindness struck him harder than any business deal or luxury he had ever known, and what followed would shake his beliefs to the core. The man's name was Richard Caldwell, a millionaire who prided himself on building an empire from inheritance, luxury, and status. He wore tailored suits, lived in a sprawling mansion, and believed wealth was a sign of superiority. His daughter, Emily, was his pride, though she had lost her sight at a young age due to a degenerative illness. Despite her blindness, she radiated innocence and resilience, a stark contrast to her father's cold ambition. Richard often paraded Emily around at social events, using her as a reminder of his devotion and sacrifice. But in truth, he was impatient with her condition, frustrated by how it reminded him of something he couldn't control or fix with money. One summer afternoon, Richard visited a construction site he was investing in. Expensive cars lined the edge of the dirt field, but amidst the roar of machines and sweat-soaked workers, his daughter sat quietly under the shade of a tree. He had brought her along, thinking she would sit silently as he discussed profits with architects. That was when Richard noticed one of the workers stepping away from his crew. A tall, broad-shouldered black man in a hard hat crouched next to Emily. To Richard's shock, the man opened a small lunchbox and began gently feeding her, making sure every spoonful reached her carefully. Richard's first instinct was anger. How dare a worker touch his daughter? But as he watched, something inside him stirred. At first, Richard's pride boiled. He had always carried an unspoken disdain for men like that worker. To him, construction workers were the kind of people who couldn't rise above their station, and a black man, in Richard's biased mind, had even further to climb to earn his respect. But as his eyes stayed locked on the scene, he couldn't look away. The worker didn't know Richard was watching. His hands were careful, his movements patient. He spoke softly, describing the food as though Emily could see it, helping her imagine the taste before every bite. And Emily, normally withdrawn in unfamiliar settings, smiled. Her shoulders relaxed, her lips curved gently. It was the first, genuine smile Richard had seen from her all day. The contrast pierced him. Richard thought of his own behavior toward his daughter. The rushed meals, the dismissive tone when she struggled to find her way, the way he treated her blindness as a flaw rather than a part of her. He remembered the countless times she reached out a hand, and he brushed it off, too busy, too self-important. He shifted uneasily. For the first time in years, Richard felt small. He asked around about the man and learned his name was James. He was a single father raising 2 children after losing his wife to illness. Despite grueling shifts, James never missed a parent-teacher conference, never failed to show up for his kids, and was known by co-workers as the man who gave his lunch away to anyone who was hungry. Richard's chest tightened. Everything he thought defined strength, power, money, status, suddenly seemed hollow in the shadow of James's quiet dignity. James, without wealth or prestige, carried more love and humanity than Richard had ever shown his own daughter. The breaking point came when Richard finally approached. He expected James to stand quickly, to apologize, to step back in fear of crossing the line with a millionaire's child. But James didn't. He stayed calm, finishing the spoonful for Emily before wiping her mouth gently with a napkin. Richard's voice caught in his throat. For a moment, he had no words. He saw his daughter's face glowing with warmth he himself had never managed to give. James finally looked up, his eyes steady, not submissive. He explained softly that Emily reminded him of his youngest, and he couldn't watch a child sit hungry. That simple statement shattered Richard's arrogance. He realized that for all his money, he had given his daughter everything except the one thing she needed most: kindness. In that instant, Richard's worldview collapsed. The millionaire with all the answers suddenly stood before a man he had once judged as less than, only to realize that James had taught him more in a single act than a lifetime of privilege ever had. From that day on, Richard couldn't shake what he had seen. It replayed in his mind endlessly. The sight of a construction worker's hands carefully guiding food to his daughter's lips, the ease with which Emily trusted him, and the crushing awareness that love and compassion couldn't be bought. Richard began to change, slowly at first. He started eating meals with Emily, taking the time to describe the food, letting her explore tastes and textures the way James had shown her. For the first time, Emily laughed with him, not at a party staged for appearances, but at the breakfast table where her father finally became present. Richard sought James out again, not with money or charity, but with respect. He shook his hand, thanked him sincerely, and listened to his story. He realized that humility wasn't weakness. It was strength. That race, class, and status meant nothing in the face of simple humanity. The millionaire, once trapped by his own pride, was freed by the compassion of a man society often overlooked. And in that freedom, he found something more valuable than wealth: the ability to truly love his daughter. As Richard walked away from the construction site one last time, he carried a question that would never leave him. A question meant for anyone who thought privilege excused them from compassion. What good is all the money in the world if you don't even know how to feed your own child with love?